Hi there, in this tutorial we're going to learn how to use the pencil tool to do some kind of creative hand-drawn effects. We're also going to take the lines and make them dashed and dotted. We'll also do things like this with a kind of swooshy, add arrowheads, okay, hopefully yours will look nicer than my ones. And we're going to go and do that now in this tutorial. All right, let's jump in. All right, so let's get started. Let's go to File, let's go to New. We're going to have our print document, it's going to be letter, and it's going to be landscape. Okay, let's click Create. Let's bring in an image, so File, Place. Okay, and the difference in this case is we did before, we're going to use Drawing 1, and in previous tutorials, if you've watched them, we've clicked on Template, and that kind of puts it on its own layer, it fades it out a little bit, and locks it so that it's easy to draw over the top of. We don't want the kind of fading part of it, so we can't use Template. We're just going to leave Drawing 1, we're going to click Place. Okay, and you can click and drag out and that'll give you like a specific size, or if you click once, like I'm going to do here, it's going to kind of just put it in at its full size. So depending on your image, you might drag it out, or just like I've done here, click once and it comes in at full size. Also, just to make sure I've got view and make sure Smart Guides is turned back on. We turned it off in a previous tutorial. I'm going to click, hold and drag it so it kind of lines up. It's a little bit big for this page, that's okay. So in your layers panel, we're going to manually kind of do that template part that we did in the previous video. So this one here, I'm going to double click the word layer 1, and this is going to be background. This is not essential, it's just handy when we're doing this tutorial together. So I've named it, and this kind of mysterious icon here, this kind of empty space, click it, it locks the layer. Okay, so you just meant to know that that's the place to click. And I'm going to make a new layer. There's a little turned up page down the bottom here. I'm going to click on that once. Okay, I've got layer 2. And I'm just going to double click layer 2 and call this one drawing. Okay, and I know I'm on this layer because it's blue. So the pencil tool is this guy here. Okay, underneath our paintbrush tool, you might find you've got the shaper tool, okay, out by default. So click, hold it down and grab the pencil tool. Now the pencil tool by default is a little bit weird and a little bit hard to use, so we're going to change that. So let's say I'm going to draw a smiley face, I'm going to draw around here. Now the weird thing about it is, watch this, if I keep drawing, can you see it doesn't draw new lines, it redraws over the existing ones and kind of disappears. It's kind of a strange thing to happen, so we're going to change that by default. So I'm going to delete that, putting the delete key on my keyboard. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to go to my properties panel and I'm going to make sure that I've got no fill and I'm going to have a stroke of white. Okay, just to fit with what we've got in the background here. To change the pencil tool options, you just double click on it. So double click the pencil tool, and in here there's things we want to change, like keep selected. Okay, we want turned off. Okay, and the other thing we want to do is here where it says fidelity, okay, it's going to try and help you out and make your drawing look a little smoother and a little better. I love it right up. Okay, especially if I'm drawing, say, with my mouse like I am here, or my touchpad. Wacom is a little different, okay? Even with a Wacom tablet, okay, where you're drawing with a pen, I like to crank it up. You maybe not as high as this, but we'll go full max smooth. And now when we draw, look what happens. It just kind of makes everything fluid and nice. That's probably not the nicest, okay? But let's grab our black arrow. I'm going to delete them. What I'd like to do here is just some kind of freeform. I'm going to do flames out the bike for no good reason, but you can see when I draw and I let go, it's done quite a nice job. And what I'm going to do is actually do one piece, and watch when I let go, kind of smooths that out nice. So my flames are going to be terrible. What I'd like to do is, instead of doing them in one go, I'd like to have two parts. It's just going to help us when we do the next bit of example, when we have a little look at brushes. So I'm just going to kind of draw these flames. Now I really want to go grab my Wacom tablet here because this is looking pretty bad. These are meant to be flames, by the way. Looks like a pineapple's growing out the back. It totally looks like a pineapple. That's okay. What we're going to do is look at some of the techniques for stroke. So some of the first things you need to know about drawing lines like this is, with the black arrow, let's select them all. And because we've got the background layer locked, okay, it doesn't select any of that stuff. So I've got them selected, and over here under our properties panel, okay, the basics are stroke. We've got our stroke weight, which we looked in at a earlier example. Okay, I'm going to crank it up to say 6 points just so I can show you some of these other options for stroke. Now to open up all the advanced settings for the stroke, you just click on the word stroke and it kind of opens them all up. If you want to go a different way, there's a way of opening up that panel forever by going to Window and open up Stroke. So if you're getting sick of having to open it and you've got a big enough computer, okay, you can just go to Window and Stroke, and it's only giving you the tiny options. Weird, I know. But if you double click the word stroke, double click it again, it's got like 3 modes. 4 modes. Small version, stupid version, massive version. I don't know why they've got these different versions. Okay, but if you keep clicking on it, you'll find that's the like big version. I'm going to use this option in here, okay, just so it collapses back in and better use of my space. So I'm going to click on it, and the first thing we're going to look at is the capping. Okay, so this changes quite a bit of the look. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit of my pineapple flames. Okay, so I'm going to click on stroke. By default, you're going to have what's called a butt cap. Okay, right there, butt cap. Unfortunately named, and it's this kind of just flat at the end. And if I click this next one, rounded cap, can you see I'm going to go on, off, on, off. Just kind of rounds off the ends, and that's really nice, especially when you get a low stroke, okay, a small stroke like this, and you just don't want to have like really pointy ends or butt caps, okay, just kind of curves it off a little bit nicely. I'm going to go back up to 6 points. Let's have a little look at some of the other options. So butt cap is flat at the end. This one here I very rarely use. Projecting cap kind of goes out past the line, ends here, and it goes back past. So let's go butt cap, projecting cap. I think I just like saying butt cap. Okay, projecting cap. Actually, I'm going to leave it on butt cap. Okay, and we've got these corners here. So lots of these lines aren't corners, they're just straight lines. This one here's a corner, and did I do any other ones? I think just this one here. Look what happens when I change it from a corner of a mitered join to a round join. Okay, can you see where it goes around this curve? It's rounded on the edge. Okay, so the joins are different. And this last one here kind of bevels it off like an edge. I never use that one either. So either of those first two are quite good. I'm going to leave those as is. And what might look good for our flaming pineapple now is down here, right at the bottom, something called profile. Profile is a nice way of just changing the line instead of being perfect all the way along. Look on this one here, just kind of makes it tapered at both ends. You can kind of see that gets projected onto our lines. That's kind of why I wanted having separate lines, because you get this kind of like pointy ends on both sides. Whereas this one here, it's pointy at the tippy tips, okay, but not, it's quite thick through the middle here. Up to you. Okay, but have a little play around with the rest of them. So I've got them selected, click on stroke, and down the bottom here in profile, I can go through and say, I want this one, which is kind of strange, yeah, more pineapple-y. Okay, you can flip them, okay, depending on how you want them on the line. And yeah, let's have a little look at some of the other ones. I'll let you have a look, okay? Points, other ones. I'm going to probably go back. I like this one, I think, this width profile 5. I'm going to use him. Cool. Now there's a couple more things I want to show you about strokes, drawing with strokes. One of them is, say, arrows. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my pencil tool again. Okay, and I'm going to draw something that looks like that. Meant to be like the wheels turning. That's what it's meant to look like. Okay, that's okay. Okay, with it selected, I'm going to grab my black arrow. I'm going to click both of these by dragging a box around them. And what I'll do is go to stroke. And this one here, arrowheads, are quite important. Well, quite useful, okay? So with it selected, the 2 lines, you've got a beginning and an ending. And it really depends on which way you started drawing. Play with both. Okay, I'm going to go arrow here. It's kind of not the way I wanted it. So that's actually the end, not the beginning. I want it turning this way. Okay, so if you scroll down the arrowheads, eventually they turn into the kind of tail ends of the arrow. And this is going to look better for the beginning. Okay, and by better, it's a pretty wonky arrow. I'm going for this hand-drawn look. Okay, so profile as well, I might go through and try and make it look nicer. Now, you can see I added that kind of profile the same as this one over here, but it just doesn't look the same if I click off. Okay, it's quite thin. It just means the stroke width isn't that high. So with them selected, I'm going to raise the stroke width. Now, what happens with arrowheads is that by default, they've got a weird proportion to the line. Okay, so a 4-point arrowhead's really big. So when I click on stroke, there's a percentage underneath both of these ends. And you can see if I scale this one down, it's going pretty slow. So I'm going to toggle it down to maybe, say, 20% of the line and 20% of the line. Why? Because that looks a bit weird, but I want to increase this kind of stroke width. Okay, and maybe flip it across. I don't know, I've made really ugly lines. But you're getting the sense of it, right? With you can add arrowheads, easy peasy. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at dashed and dotted lines, and we're going to try and make it look better. Like, I promise you, when I practiced this, I had flames out the back and cool arrows. It's turned not so good in actual practice. All right, so what we're going to do is do a little dotted line around here, so it looks like it's cut it. Not dotted line, a dashed line, so it looks like she could be cut out. So pencil tool again, I'm going to just draw a really rough kind of line around the outside. Line around the outside. Mouse stopped at the edge of the desk, and we're going around. Okay, back to the beginning. The cool thing about going back to the beginning, watch this. Remember that little icon with a circle? See that changes there? That kind of shows you it's going to kind of complete it. Cool. So not hard. If I select on the line and I click on stroke, there is a dashed line. Click on it, magically dashed. If I click off, okay, dashed line. There's a couple of things you might want to do with a dashed line. So I've got it selected. I'm going to increase it so I can show you. And back under stroke, things like the rounded cap. Can you see the difference between those two? Depending on what you want to do. The other thing is that the dashed line here, if you leave, it's just going to do 12 and 12. So 12 points and then a gap of 12 points. You can increase this. Okay, so maybe 22. Okay, and it's just going to do 22 points and 22 points. You could have a smaller gap. Say I want 10. So it's going to have smaller gaps and larger kind of dots or dashes. Okay, you can do the opposite. So the dash can be quite small, so maybe 2 point, and the gap's going to be quite big. Okay, depending on what you want to do. I feel like that's kind of like a zipper detail or Frankenstein stitches, one or the other. Let's go back up. I'm going to do 12 and 12. Now you don't have to, if you want them to be identical, you can just leave 12 and it will kind of guess that then what you mean by the gap is 12. Let's look at dotted lines. Weirdly, there should just be an option that says dotted as well, but it doesn't, and they're really hard. And even when I'm making them, I'm like, how the hang do you make a dotted line again? Okay, it's a funny old thing. So let's grab the pencil tool, and I'm going to draw like tassels from this. Okay, I'm going to grab my black arrow, select both of these, and get rid of the dashes. So click on stroke. You might not have yours. Okay, so let's turn it off. So straight line. I'm going to have my weight at about 4 point. Now, weird thing is dotted is actually part of dashed. Okay, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you make the dash 0 and you make the gap anything, so 12, it makes kind of dots. Actually, they're just lines. Okay, so with them selected in here, all I need to do is change it from that default, which is a butt cap, to a round cap. And that makes our little dotted lines. Okay, so you just need to make sure one of them, the dash is 0. So it's actually got no length. Okay, but there's a rounder cap around it, so it kind of wants to wrap itself around that nothingness. Dotted lines, they're kind of weird. Okay, so turn on the dashed line, make sure the dash is 0, and you can have the gap any size you like. Okay, 20 will just space them out. You can have them really kind of close together. They can even kind of like overlap like that. I'm going to go for 10. Nice. All right, zoom out. Let's have a look at our magical drawing. We've learned of things about strokes. We haven't made anything very pretty though. But what we'll do in the next tutorial is we'll add brush strokes and things will get marginally prettier. So let's go and do that now in the next tutorial.